well. I'm sorry to kind of be doing this a little bit later tonight. I had some things pop up with my dad that I had to handle. So just getting back and decided to do the class. We are in the second half of the course as far as the finance portion of this. And so what I'd like to do, I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I want to do an overview tonight, just a quick overview of the funding that comes to our to the school system, to the public schools. And then I'd like to break it down and start talk about it district-wide and then break it down to school-wide, and then also discuss for you in further sessions what happens when things don't work out, whether you're working with your local government, and interesting things that happened in my county that I thought would be it's historic in North Carolina, actually, and from a legal standpoint, and it's still going on. So I think this would be interesting for you to look at. So let's just start tonight and talk a little bit about general funding and where it comes from. You basically have there's multiple sources for your budget for a school system, and let's just start at the top. Not the most amount of money, but the federal government does provide funding to the school system. Federal government basically raises its this money through income tax, but there are other taxes that help cover the budget for the federal government. You will see the federal government's role in education come through the EC department, as everybody should know, through the child nutrition, through CTE, career and technical education. And these are all various departments within the administrative branch of the federal government. Funding, of course, is approved by Congress, but then it's administered by, for example, CT is let me back up. Child nutrition is administered through the agricultural department. You will have the EC is run through the education department. So there's definitely a hand in the budget of the local budget through the federal government. It's generally also a big one is Title I, Title II, Title IX, the different titles. There's a large amount of funding that goes to schools from those things that again comes from the education department is administered. And then you have to obviously follow specific rules and guidelines. It's usually very tight. That money that comes from the federal government can be only spent on certain things. Recently, we had the race to the top dollars that came from the federal government that brought a sort of a surge of money into the schools after the economic collapse of a few years ago. It was one of those things that helped boost the schools, provide funding to the schools. But it was, again, very tight, and had you specify what your dollars are going to be used for, and it's watched, and you had to report on that every year. Another big thing that they have are a variety of grants that are written that you can get through the federal government. Again, just as the other things, it has to be very tight at how you write your grant. It has to be very it has to be exactly, you spend it what you say you're going to spend it on, and it's accountable for what you spend it on. So that's how the federal government works. It's not the majority of the money that goes to the schools, but there's a good chunk of money that comes. And the schools could not having that money would drastically hurt the schools in many, many ways. And it provides, in a lot of ways, the balancing, the equity in a number of different parts of our school system. Child nutrition, for example. For child nutrition funds kind of go back, the history of this goes back to World War II, when the people that were going into the service, there was malnutrition, and the President Truman at that time signed a bill for the child nutrition, and that was to help booster the food service program at the high schools. And so when men would come out of high school that would be had the proper nutrition to be able to join the military. So there was different purposes as to why the federal government got involved. Okay, so that's the federal government. Let's talk about the state government. The state government is the authority through the Constitution for a school system that will provide a sound basic education. That's in the verbiage of the Constitution, a sound basic education. And there was a big court case about, 12 years ago that we are still under. Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system is one of those schools that was part of that court case. There's a number of different schools that were part of that court case in the state of North Carolina. And it truly had a huge impact on how state funding goes. State funding is generally comes raised through state income tax, sales tax, taxes on DMV, lottery, etc. And of course, every year the General Assembly, there's a biennial budget, but every year they look at that budget. One year it's in the House, it starts out in the House, one year it starts out in the Senate. It always begins with the governor's budget, then it goes to, this year I think the Senate budget came out first after the governor, and then it went to the House budget, and now they're in session working together to conferees are meeting to determine what the budget is, and hopefully that's going to come out pretty soon. So this is an important time to be studying that. The federal government, the state government is responsible for everything except capital. The current expense budget is their responsibility, but you will find that the current expense budget, the local budget in your counties will also help pay for current expense. But truly, the state government is the one that's responsible for that constitutionally. The county government's responsible for your capital, your buildings, your buses, your initial cost of your buses. After the initial cost of the bus, the state will pick it up. But the first year, the bus that you buy, you have to buy the bus, and after that, the state will maintain it and will replace it. Therefore, moving forward. Sometimes the state government will have a bond referendum for capital. Most recently, the money that we've received from capital from the state has been through the lottery funds. And it's really up to the local government how they spend it. Our particular county used it for construction to help pay off some of the debt from our bonds that we were going through a lot of construction. So current expense budget mainly should come from the state. The capital budget, which is your big ticket items, mostly comes from the local government. The current expense budget is everything from instructional dollars to teachers to principals to guidance counselors. All that is covered really at the state. But when the local government, what's called the public education, doesn't get what they feel like they need from the state government, they can make requests in their local government for specific current expense budgets. Once a budget is approved at the county level, the current expense budget is there for forevermore, has been added. So if you add $10,000 to the current expense budget for the school system, then that $10,000 will be in this year's budget, next year's budget, the following year's budget. You have to request any new dollars. There are two parts to a local budget, and I've already said that there's a current expense and a capital. So the current expense is always maintained. Once you've added the money to the budget, it's maintained thereafter. The capital is not that way. The capital, you always have to go take what your needs are for that next year for the capital. So if I need $10,000 for computers or big ticket computer routers and things like that, I don't get that $10,000. I get that $10,000 this year if they approve it, but I don't get that $10,000 the next year. I have to take another request to on the capital side of things. And there is a schedule for both the state budget and the your local budget. State budget's going through. You're supposed to have a budget by June 30th. They've extended that. We don't really have a budget right now. And that's pretty typical in election years. You kind of go through this, goes a little bit longer generally. The local budget, the superintendent's budget has to be in by May. It has to be in May and approved by the Board of Education by May 15th. It has to then go to the county budget, goes to the county commissioners have till June 30th to have a budget, therefore moving forward for the rest of the year. That is kind of the budget in a nutshell. It's very quick and messy here. We will get into other things in the next lesson on specifics of the district budget, how you put it together, how it kind of works, the process it works, and then we'll take it from there to the other aspects, break it down into the school sites, and then moving on. Real quickly, I'll put this in an email to you. I think I've had very little. Number of people show up for the Wednesday session. So I think what I'm going to do is, unless I get a request for somebody to have a Wednesday Google Hangout session, we won't have those anymore. I'll be available for those Wednesdays. This Wednesday I'll have to do it at 5:30 if we have it. But again, I'll wait and see if anybody wants to have it. And I am planning on, as far as your assignments go, trying to get that all caught up this week and this weekend. So be looking for information from me. You guys are doing a great job on what I have read. So again, this concludes our Google Hangout. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great night, and email me with any questions. Call me on my cell phone if you have anything that pops up. Take care. Good night.